Welcome to the Nightly Rant
with
your hosts, Mike
and Toria.
This is the show where we examine society from a sarcastic point of view.
If you like insane conversations, this is definitely the show for you.
Let's get into today's topic. YPN people, I don't know about you, but I love helping out a friend. That's why I want to shout out my friend Brian Little and his podcast, Your Favorite Blockhead. This is the only show that manages to weave together peanuts and MMA into one heck of an amazing podcast. You can find Your Favorite Blockhead wherever your favorite podcasts reside and at yourfavoriteblockhead.com. Do me a huge favor and listen to Brian's show. You'll be entertained and you'll help out a friend. Now, as I said, let's get into today's topic. So, hey, as you know, I've been sharing every single episode that comes out to a whole host of Facebook groups in the area, right?
Now we're going to get all the haters.
Well, yeah, that. But also, what's interesting is we had this McDonald's episode and how horrible McDonald's is. And I asked people to tell their fast food nightmare stories. And this guy says not once, but twice, he's gotten a chicken McNugget with a chicken claw in it.
That's horrifying.
But part of me, part of me wants to believe it, but part of me is like, that just sounds like an old wives' tale. So you know what? Here's what we're going to do. We got this guy waiting over here, Abe Abdelhadi. He is the host of The Bitter Truth with Abe Abdelhadi, and he's a good friend of our show. I've been on his show a few times. He's been on our show a few times. Always has great things to say. So, hey, Abe, welcome.
Well, thanks for welcoming me. I'm glad to be here.
So what do you think? What do you think about this chicken claw and the chicken McNugget? Wives' tale or actually happened?
You know what? I mean, it probably happened like 10 years ago. It's like Rod Stewart giving blowjobs back in the day when we were in junior high school. You remember that?
Yes.
He had to get his stomach pumped, and you know, everybody at my school, there was a kid who knew a guy whose mom's cousin's dad's wife's sister worked at the hospital the night he got dragged in there. So it was for real.
So something funny about that. This is totally not where I thought this was going to go. But you mentioned the Rod Stewart thing, right? And that's true. Like we both kind of grew up in the same area, so I'm sure we heard a lot of the same. We're going to put them in quotes, rumors.
Right.
But like years later, my oldest son was an ice hockey player. And so his very first season playing ice hockey, never played before. And his coach says, hey, we have this opportunity. It's like, I think they had the All-Star game in town or something. And he's like, we have this opportunity to play our game against the Junior Kings on Staples Center ice. All right, cool. Let's go there. Well, we get there, and what's the woman that he had a kid with? What was her name? Rachel.
Rachel Hunter was one of them.
Rachel Hunter. Rachel Hunter.
Four wives, yeah.
So there's Rachel Hunter in the lobby of the Staples Center with like all kinds of hockey dads swarming back and forth because they think she's so gorgeous. And next thing you see, come walking up, Rod Stewart, and they go inside and sit down. Well, their kid ends up in the penalty box. And he's so funny that he walks down with his phone, has the kid turn around, and he gets a selfie with himself and his son in the penalty box. And like, we would run into that dude all over the place. Like one time, this is what a nice guy he actually was. One time he was at a tournament, and it was at the Disney ice. And a guy came up and said, oh, Rod Stewart, I love your music. Will you sign an autograph for me? And he turned around, and he looked at the guy, and he goes, sir, I will most certainly sign an autograph for you. But at the moment, I am watching my son play in a hockey game. It's going to be over in about 3 minutes. I promise you, I'm going to be right here. You just come on up and I'll sign for you. And that dude waited after the game 20 minutes in that spot for that man to show back up. But he waited. So it's just funny, that you'd bring up Rod Stewart, just triggered that memory. But chicken claw, I mean, I'm with you. Maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, it's like somebody put their kitty in the microwave. You hear this stuff all the time.
Pixar, it didn't happen, bro. Pixar, it didn't happen.
But then the next thing about Facebook that will lead us into our next topic is your post today about, 2017 Democrats said, what was it? Mueller's report.
We'll respect what we got the right guy to do the report, and then 2018 we'll respect what the report says. Now 2019 they're like, yeah, the report's wrong, basically,
Well, yeah, because they want to spend more money.
Well, the thing about wanting to spend more money, it's not their money, so they don't care. But anything to make them, to have them save face. Listen, this is no different than when the Republicans lost their minds when Obama wore a tan suit and he had a birth certificate issue, right? And I'm like,
right.
You guys they spent 3 or 4 years chasing him down for this crap. Meanwhile, he's getting us into 8 wars. He's gutting unions. He's, not prosecuted one banker, right? And and then to his base, these guys look like lunatics because they're talking about crap that's not even based in fact. Doesn't that sound familiar? For 3 years, we got pitched an evidence-free conspiracy theory with like zero evidence. The JFK, I got 9 guys killed JFK. I got a concrete theory for every one of them that's based in some fact.
Right.
But this wasn't based in any fact whatsoever, much less facts that weren't debunked. And they just couldn't let it go, man. And even after the report came out, when there's a ton of stuff in there about obstruction of justice and everything else, focus on that. They can't let it go. They got to keep harping on this Russia shit. And you're going, man, dude. Okay, you know what? You're giving his base a big kiss, and he's going to conflate this exoneration from this one thing with all of his other sins. And instead of focusing on his failures, his failed tariffs, and all this stuff, country's getting off the dollar. Those are real things to cover in the news. And his base has no idea. The so-called liberal doesn't have any idea. They don't know what's going on.
But he'll use this to get reelected. He's already working it, and he's going to craft it to get reelected. Hey, Toria, would something like this ever happen in Canadian politics, or would someone just get their ass booted out?
I think that the only Canadian politician I can think of that had as much drama surrounding him as Trump does is an old premier of Alberta. And like the shining jewel on the crown of his being premier of Alberta was him taking a giant handful of change and like throwing it at a herd of homeless people. And so
wow.
he was a special dude. And let's just say he didn't get reelected and his party didn't get reelected for many years after that.
Interesting.
Well, and this is the thing with the Democrats, though, and not to interrupt you, but I mean, the thing that because of their hubris, they don't they understand. I mean, I know Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell don't really care who wins because they're worth $100 million being in politics, which I don't know how you do that, but they are. The Democrats for sure would rather lose with Kamala Harris or Cory Booker than win with Bernie Sanders, because then the money's going to dry up. So they're already plotting, and I'm not a Bernie fan these days, but they're already plotting because he's got so much momentum now. They're already plotting the superdelegates. They got superdelegates committed to already vote against him, and it's 2019, and the primaries haven't even started yet. So people are like wondering, who could beat Trump? Well, it's not Julian Castro. It's not going to be Cory Booker. The CIA tested, mother approved pricks who just basically toe the company line. That's not what's going to do it. They need somebody who's going to actually speak to the people and say something that they want to hear. And what the Democrats keep doing in their stupidity is handing Trump these just softballs, and they're going to softball his ass right into the White House again. And they're not going to impeach him. That's a joke. They know they can't get a conviction, so they want to impeach him. Nancy Pelosi already said she's not going to impeach him. And why? Because she'd be indicted herself.
Yeah.
What's she going to investigate? She and all those guys. And unlike a president, a congressperson and a senator can get dragged out in handcuffs. How many people in our lifetime have we seen get arrested and put in jail out of the Congress? A lot. There's no waiting for their term to be over. They're removed. They're indicted. If they're convicted, it's over. They're in jail for, in some cases, quite a few years. So, she's not going to, she didn't do it in 2006 when they were looking at prosecuting W for war crimes. She got to the Speaker of the House in 2006 and she said, yeah, we're not going to impeach. Whoa, wait a minute. I thought he was this terrible, horrible guy. Flash forward, 2019. I thought he was this terrible, horrible guy. Oh, we're not going to impeach. But you spent 2 years telling me he was a terrible, horrible guy. So why aren't you going to impeach? oh, well, because it's not good for the country. No, it's not good for you.
Well, yeah, it's not going to benefit her. But Toria, has that ever happened in Canada? Like, do you have a mechanism for removing a corrupt leader?
Pretty much. They just call an election if there's a corrupt leader. So more people than just the opposition have to see them as corrupt if it's a majority government, or if it's a minority government, then the other side just pretty much has to be like, this dude is a problem. We're going to call an election. So unlike here, where elections are on a certain day every 4 years like clockwork, you can call an election early in Canada if there's a problem that needs to be solved.
See that what do you think would happen, Abe, if we had a law like that where, all right, so they're pissed off with Trump, they think he's incompetent, so they vote to have a new election.
You'd have elections every 5 minutes.
Yeah, well, maybe so, but I mean, especially in the Congress, right? But I mean, to kind of piggyback on your earlier point, Tori, I mean, shoot, the problem with Canada is you guys do a lot of cool things, and then you wait 10 years and you screw it up like we do. So this idea that you guys are doing it now, I don't know how long it'll last, but if we did it here in this country, first of all, we can't even get people to talk about getting rid of the Electoral College without them losing their minds. You know, it goes like they think it's like Jesus Christ and the apostles and the founding fathers. I'm like, you do know King James wasn't an apostle, right? Knothead. Just like everything's like conflated. The Constitution is sacrosanct and set in stone, and you're going, no, it's not. It was designed to be changed. We can make amendments and stuff. I mean, you put an amendment like you try to get an amendment like that. The only way we're going to get an amendment like that, dude, is protesting in the streets. We haven't had a good, solid protest like in 30 years. And I mean like a real down-home, women's suffrage, civil rights type stuff. You know what I mean? We just don't do that anymore. We wait for the elected guys to give it to us. And that's why we're just a bunch of whiny sacks these days. It's like, well, gee, they don't want to get us out of the wars. Well, maybe we should protest the wars, Maybe we should start boycotting people that support, that manufacture consumer goods that also has the defense contractors. Maybe we shouldn't buy GE products or GM products. I mean, you know what I mean? I'm just thinking out loud, but man, we just don't. We just keep waiting for these guys to change the law. That's a great idea, but I don't think we'll do it without a protest.
Well, but I'm not so sure. To go back to your comment about the Electoral College, I'm not so sure it matters whether there's an Electoral College or not. I mean, really, there's only been like a super small number of times that the person winning the electoral vote didn't win the popular vote. I mean, so small that it's negligible. And
well, it's happened 5 times. It's happened almost 10% of the time. It's happened 5 times.
So that's an A. I mean, you're doing good. So I don't think it really matters either way. But I do think that you really need to, if you're going to go to a strict popular vote, you really need to pay attention to the corruption that could and will happen. That's why.
That's where I think a system like ranked choice voting might help with that, because then you don't have the coast voting for the president either. You don't have California and New York, voting for the president, leaving the middle states out.
That's kind of what I was getting at. Is I think I don't think it's a choice. In my opinion, it's not a choice between popular vote only, Electoral College only, because I think that you're going to get very similar results whichever system you use of those two. But
no, we
need to shake it up a bit. But we need to shake it up a bit and do something different, like ranked choice voting, because it would totally then change the landscape of how this whole thing would work. I mean, we were just at the Libertarian Convention for California, beginning of April, and one of the guys who I think is kind of a loon bag, he wanted to present a motion that instead of electing a chairperson and instead of electing a vice chairperson, that everybody who wants to run for chair goes into this big old group, and then whoever gets the most votes is the chair, whoever gets the second most votes is the vice chair. But instead of just getting like one choice, you'd rank them. This person's number 1, this person's number 2, this person's number 3, and you do it like, that's how like a bodybuilding show is done. They they literally, give them a 1 if they think they're in first place. So the idea is to get the lowest points possible. Well, same thing here, and I think it would work great. I think it would work fantastic, but they voted it down. So,
Well, listen, the system is not going to ever vote anything that's going to jeopardize their own interests. I mean, the Commission on Presidential Debates, that's a corporate approved, corporate run, corporate sponsored, not one government official, not one it's not an elected body. You remember when it used to be I used to call them the PTA, the Legal Women's Voters?
Yeah.
And they were cool. I mean, they let Ross Perot on. They let John Anderson on the debates in 1980 with Reagan and Carter. They're sort of like, yeah, okay. Well, what'd you do before? Oh, I was a congressman. Okay, you can be in the. They didn't come up with these arbitrary numbers, and and if you made your case, and this is one thing I'll say about the Republicans, is I think they're a bunch of pricks. But I'll tell you one thing: when they lose an election, what I've seen, they'll at least go, well, hey man, you didn't make your case. Like they didn't get pissed off at Ross Perot when Bush 41 lost. You know what I mean? I didn't see any Republicans running around going, oh, he stole the vote, man. He was a spoiler. They were like, you didn't make your case. Maybe that crack he made about PC didn't go over very well with people. We're in a recession, dickhead. And he's like, yeah, I guess you're right. Clinton's president, that's the end, right? Dole loses, same thing. You didn't make your case, man. Gave you a shot. Mitt Romney loses. I didn't see anybody freaking out over Gary Johnson. Oh, he stole votes. The Republicans are like, hey, you didn't make your case. Let's have a postmortem. You didn't make your case. That's how they handle losses. The Democrats never take responsibility for anything. Al Gore had no business losing that election, and I'm not an Al Gore fan, but numbers-wise, you're coming out, and this is a perception now. This is a perception. I don't believe this. This is a perception. If you're the vice president coming out of one of the most successful presidencies of the 20th century, and you can't take Tennessee, your own state, and Arkansas, the state of the president, the sitting president, because you're afraid to bring him out over a blowjob or perjury, rather. And then, you keep checking the polls to see how you're coming off, and you won't even talk about climate change, which is your pet issue. And you come down to, 500 stinking votes in one stinking state? If he took Tennessee and Arkansas, he'd have won that election handily. Did the Democrats take responsibility? No, they blame Ralph Nader. 1.5% of the vote. They blame Ralph Nader. It should have been a slaughter. Even though Jill Stein didn't even take 1.5% of the votes, I got liberal friends that blame her for Hillary Clinton. And I'm going, wait, Hillary Clinton won 4 million votes over Trump. What do you mean it's Jill Stein's fault? Well, she siphoned votes off of Hillary. Yeah, because people in Ohio and Wisconsin and Michigan are overwhelmingly voting for Jill Stein over Hillary Clinton.
Right.
The people that voted for Obama twice, by the way, they voted for Bush and they voted for Obama twice, and they got screwed. And then she's saying, hey, status quo is great. Medicare for all will never come to pass. That's what you tell Anderson, Indiana, that has no jobs and no health care. That's what you tell Scranton, Pennsylvania, who's raffling off their sewage and parking system just to make payroll for the next 5 years to a bunch of mobsters. And so Hillary's won't even go to those states because she can't even hold her head in those states. Trump's there 3 times a month. He's lying, but he ran to the left of her. That's how he won. He campaigned his ass off, right? And he was saying all the right things even though he was fucking lying. But she ran a crap campaign. The only candidate that didn't have to campaign to be a president. I never saw that before in my life. I'm only 55 and the country's older than me. But that was amazing to me, the arrogance, right? And it blows my mind.
It's that whole entitlement thing that we've talked about before.
Yes.
She thought it was owed to her in some way, shape, or form. I mean, and that's
so do the Democrats.
This is the thing. You can only imagine, being married to a Canadian. We have these discussions sometimes, and she's very convinced that their way is better than our way, and I'm very convinced that their way is not better than our way. But did you notice what I said there? I'm convinced that their way is not better than our way. I didn't say our way is better than their way, because I definitely don't think that. But I try to think of ways that we could rock the boat a little bit by borrowing. You know how you look at two systems and you go, well, neither one is really perfect, but maybe we could take good parts of both and come up with a much better system than either one, right? But I have such a hard time with some of the things, and it's because, it's indoctrination. It's been taught to me for my entire life that this is how it's supposed to be. This is the right way. Why are you trying to mess with it? And then my progressive side of me says, well, but we need to make these changes, and it's okay to make changes. It just, I can't figure out though what parts of like a parliamentary system like Canada has would mesh well with the US system. And if you ask Victoria, what do you think, honey? What should happen?
Honestly, I don't think the Canadian system would mesh well with the American system.
But you told me before you would replace it. Yeah, you told me before you'd replace it.
But I also don't think that it's the best system. I just think it functions a little bit less biased and bullshitty than it does here.
Less biased, you said?
Yeah. Less
Yeah,
biased,
I agree.
less bullshit.
Well, because listen, power, absolute power corrupts absolutely. At least with the Canadian European systems, what I see, and when you start screwing with it, is you have what happens in France. What I see is the filter is basically like, well, listen, how can we help the people? And if we can help them kind of, stay alive and, get an education, maybe they'll pay more in taxes, and maybe they'll stay alive longer and, pay more in taxes and, whatever. And so that's kind of the way they kind of look at it. With here, it's like for the last 40 years at least, we've had corporations suck the marrow out of the treasury. $1.2 trillion in defense. We occupy 80% of the world. I love Rafael Correa, the last president of Ecuador, who's in exile right now. By the way, that should tell you something. He's in exile in Europe right now. But when the United States was trying to run roughshod over him over the Julian Assange thing and drilling, and he's like, yeah, screw you guys. And they wanted to put a base in Ecuador. And he's like, yeah, when I get to have a base in Miami, you can have a base in Ecuador. How does that sound? and they're like, you dick. And he's like, you're a dick. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't want you here. I don't want you drilling in my country. I'm going to sell the oil myself, and we're not going to drill in a national park. We got plenty of places to get oil. And guess what? You're not going to have a base here. And yeah, I gave Assange citizenship and asylum, neener. And they couldn't wait to get him out of there. It's like, you think it's a coincidence that Lenin Moreno gets a $5 billion loan, not free money. And he breaks all kinds of really great international laws that are there for a fucking reason. But, between him and the United States, we can do whatever we want. And that's sort of the hypocrisy that makes me crazy, this American exceptionalism, that we can do no wrong. And when we go in there, we drop bombs, mark democracy and Christianity, and they hug kids, and they make hospitals and build churches. They don't kill anybody. Obama would never drop bombs on a hospital on purpose. He just had bad coordinates. Trump would never do that. He's a godly man. Go fuck yourself and quit watching TV.
but okay. Well,
Tell us how you really feel.
Let's reel this back into where we were before, which is the people, just completely losing their shit now over this Mueller report. Like what I said to Victoria when I heard it was coming soon. I said, okay, here's the problem. These are people who told us, hey, Mueller's the guy. If there was collusion, Mueller will find it. If
right.
Trump did something, Mueller's the guy. He's going to find it for sure. Then the report comes out, and the first thing the Democrats say is, no way. That's no. You're wrong. Wait a second. You told us that this guy was the guy. He was going to find it if it was there. So the fact that he didn't find it must mean it's not there, right? I mean, it mustn't be there. Why do we care?
Well, A, why do we care? And B, why do we care what Mueller has to say? He's one of the principals that lied us into the Iraq War.
Exactly. Why do we care? The whole thing is, all they want to do, Abe, is they want to fight with each other. The Democrats, they want to bash on a Republican president. And then if the shoe was reversed, you and I both know if Hillary had won, this very same thing would be playing out in this exact same way. There would have been a special investigator appointed. They would have looked into who the hell knows what, but multiple things. And there would have been indictments of people that were close to her because, like I tell everybody, you could investigate Mark Zuckerberg, who looks like, Opie from, Andy Griffith, and you're going to find he's done some pretty sleazy things with foreign countries when he wasn't supposed to. I mean, it's there. That's how business works. But they want to crow about, we caught 36 indictments. Yeah, who cares? You didn't get
36 indictments of what? 12 of those indictments. 12 of those indictments were meme writers at a Russian marketing company.
Yeah.
guys that write memes for a living. And did you see Jerry Nadler, that idiot congressman who had the nerve to say that Russiagate was the same as Pearl Harbor when he was grilling the president or the CEO from Google, and he's like, "Did you conduct an investigation?" "Yeah, we sure did." "And what did you find?" "Yeah, the Russians spent $4,700."
Yeah, well,
$4,700 in that time frame.
You asked me about Nader. You asked me about Nader, and then you earlier said, we have 10 minutes. By the way, guys, 10 minutes. This stupid thing's going to shut us off. We could always turn it off and come back on, but we have 10 minutes. Anyway, you said earlier, you mentioned Nader, and then earlier you mentioned what the United States called the president of Ecuador, right? What was that four-letter word? Dick. Well, that's exactly what Nader is. He's a giant dick.
Wait, Nader or Nadler?
Nadler. He's a dick.
Yeah, you said Nader. I was talking about Jerry Nadler. Yeah.
He's a dick.
He is. He is, absolutely. And he can't let it go. And neither can Adam Schiff. None of these guys can just let it. He's another asshole, and they can't let it go. It's like, dude, you've got enough in this report to go do your job. Like this is what pissed me off about the Republicans with Benghazi. They kept going on about that one night. I'm like, why aren't you asking Hillary Clinton how we got into Libya in the first place? And how is it that we were having an ambassador shovel weapons to quote unquote moderate rebels through an embassy, which is totally illegal and violates a shit ton of really good laws? And we didn't ask her that. They didn't ask her that at all. They had her on the hot seat for 3 weeks of that stupid Benghazi hearing. All it was that night. Did Obama go to the opera? You're like, who fucking cares? Why are we in Libya? Why are we knocking out a sovereign nation and taking their crap? Is it because he was going to get off the dollar and get on the dinar and make a nation or a continent-wide African currency, which is not a conspiracy theory? It's a conspiracy fucking fact because it was in the African National Council when he got made chairman in 2009. He came up with this big whiz-bang idea to have an afro, which was their own gold and oil-backed currency.
Right.
And the U.S. was like, oh, yeah? Did you not learn from your buddy Saddam? It's the same deal. Okay, he wanted to get off the dollar, too, and that doesn't fly. And now that we got Russia getting off the dollar, and China getting off the dollar, and India getting off the dollar, what are we going to invade everybody? Let's go invade nuclear power countries. That's awesome because they got off the dollar. Good work. It's maddening, dude. It's really maddening.
You know, I've been sitting here thinking, and I'm going to reword something that you said. You know, you said that the Democrats never they don't own up to their defeats, and I'm going to say that I think most people that you run into in society in general, they do repeat the talking points that the leaders of their party say, but there are those that, you know, are reasonable and they think through what they're saying. And I don't think they would agree that they don't admit their own defeats. They try to strategize and come up with another way. But you're right. The people who have been in power like forever, like Pelosi, for instance, they never admit that they made a mistake. They strictly blame it on someone or something else. And so that's why they're so mad right now, because for 2 years, they were convinced that Mueller was going to come back and say, the Russians did it. That's why Hillary lost. And he really didn't say that's why Hillary lost.
Because she didn't lose because of that shit.
Exactly.
She didn't lose because of anything. She didn't lose because of anything other than she was a shitty candidate with baggage for days, and you cheated the guy who could have beat the orange guy. And they screwed up. You backed the wrong horse.
Baggage for
goddamn. They're so goddamn corrupt.
But he would have beaten him. We'd be talking about him as president right now, for sure.
Yeah, but then the Democratic donor money would have dried up, because then defense would have been pissed, and oil would have been pissed, and the bankers would have been pissed, and insurance would have been pissed. Everyone would have been pissed, and they would rather lose with Hillary or Cory Booker than win with a progressive. Tulsi Gabbard, they're going to cheat her, and they're going to cheat Bernie Sanders. I'm not a Bernie Sanders fan these days. He broke my heart 3 years ago, and you fool me once, shame on me and you and whatever the thing is. But you know what I'm talking about. Yep. And honestly, here's the thing: is I don't believe him. Is what it is. Like, he's got momentum, and he'll say the right thing, but I don't believe him. You know, you told me for a year and a half that Hillary sucked, and you'd be better qualified, and then you're out there campaigning for her.
Right.
And honestly, I was waiting for my big Al Pacino moment. I watched that DNC convention like I was watching the World Series. I was waiting for him to come on stage and be indignant and go, "It's clear. I got cheated, and I got more delegates, and I'm going to take my marbles, and I'm going to get Jill Stein. She's on 50 states, and I'm going to run with her." And man, that crowd would have lost their mind. It would have been all over the news.
Yep.
He would have lost their mind, and he would have won as a Green Party candidate, and he would have won.
Oh, I don't disagree with you on that.
You know what I mean? It's like he became like this cranky old version of the Beatles, right? It was like he was this huge thing, and then he blew it. He blew it. I mean, he just blew it. And so now I don't believe him. It's like I believe he's sheepdogging people into this decrepit shit party. Is what I believe.
Well, dude, this has been fun, but we're gonna kind of wrap it up here. So
All right, man.
why don't you tell everybody where they can find you?
Well, the show's called The Bitter Truth with Abe Abdelhadi. If you visit patreon.com/The Bitter Truth, you will find us there. You listen to the shows for free. You can also become a bitter pill. And we're on Spotify and iTunes and, Stitcher and YouTube and all that stuff. If you're a non-Apple person, we are also on Podcast Addict, which is a bitchin' little app where you can organize all your podcasts, kind of like Netflix. And you can also find the Nightly Rant and Liberty Revealed on Podcast Addict, because I have them on my Podcast Addict. And that's about it.
Awesome, man. Well, as usual, we had a great time. What do you got to add to this thing, honey? What are you going to say?
Abe, you were less angry tonight than you've been in previous episodes.
I'm getting more sleep these days.
All right.
Well,
fair enough.
Sleep.
Good night, everyone.
All right.
Hasta la bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Nightly Rant.
If you enjoyed the show, please give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Google Play.
If you didn't enjoy the show, please just ignore that previous request for a rating.
This has been a Yogi's Podcast Network production.